Is Buddhism still atheistic when it says ghosts are real? Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Are ghosts real or not, to avoid unnecessary disputes? Here, the term ghost is defined as the soul of a deceased person lingering in the human realm. The answer is that Buddhism does not believe in the existence of the soul. This is a significant issue, as it contributes to explaining the authenticity of Buddhism, demonstrating its distinction from Hindu traditions. Generally, Buddhist disciples do not have much affinity with Hinduism due to historical ties with Brahmanism. Why is the issue of the soul important in Buddhism? To discuss the existence or non-existence of the soul in Buddhism, one must understand how the soul was defined within the context of Buddhism's origin. According to Vedic traditions, there exists an immortal soul divided into two types: the individual soul of each person and living being, Jiva or Atman, and the universal soul, the great Atman or Brahman. It is important to note that Hinduism is not a single religion, but rather a collection of interconnected religions based on beliefs, fundamentally placing faith in the existence of both the individual and universal soul, that is, the belief in an immortal soul. After Buddhism ceased to develop in India, to this day, the Indian people have limited understanding of Buddhism. If they do, they often see Buddhism as a religion within the broader scope of Hinduism, similar to Shaivism or Krishna worship. This view has been reinforced, especially since Gautama Buddha has been widely recognized as the ninth avatar of the god Vishnu, and is even worshipped in some contexts. However, Buddhist followers have consistently rejected this assimilation, despite the commonalities and mutual influences between the two religions. Buddhism maintains its independence as long as its second seal, anata, no self, continues to be acknowledged. So what is anata, no self? Providing a comprehensive explanation for such an unfathomable concept as self and no self is impossible, at least within my limited understanding. However, it can be explained as follows. Humans are often believed to consist of two parts, body and soul, existing independently of each other. The body is finite, born, lives, and dies, while the soul is eternal, believed to be the true master that governs our consciousness and actions. After this temporary body dies, some religions propose that the soul will return to its original essence, which different religions may refer to as returning to God, heaven, the breath of life given by God into Adam's nostrils, the Tao in Taoism, or the great self, Atman, if one attains liberation in Hinduism. Meanwhile, some religions believe in reincarnation, holding that although the soul may lose memories of past lives, it retains personal characteristics and is reborn in a new body to live a new life. The concept of self can also be understood as the personal imprint that makes each of us unique and different. Thus, the simplest interpretation of non-self, anata, is that there is no existence of a self, no eternal soul, and no unique personal identity. According to Buddhist teachings, humans are composed of two parts, name, nama, and form, rupa, equivalent to mind and body. The form or body comprises parts formed by four elements, collectively known as the four great elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. The name or mind also consists of four components: consciousness, perception, sensation, and mental formations. In Buddhist scriptures, these four components of name and form are often grouped into five aggregates, skandhas, that constitute a human being: form, consciousness, perception, sensation, and mental formations. Beyond these aggregates, there is no such thing as a soul or self. Unlike other religions, Buddhism advocates a middle path between name and form. Neither he controls the other, neither precedes or follows the other, neither is eternal nor finite. All are distinct factors that come together through conditions at a specific moment, giving rise to life and naturally ceasing. There is a concept called interdependence to explain this phenomenon, whereby name and form are like the two sides of a piece of paper. One cannot tear the right side of a paper without tearing the left. This means that name and form exist and perish in mutual dependency, with mind and body arising and ceasing together. Therefore, it is not possible for something called a soul to exist independently after the body dies. In Buddhism, anata, non-self, is a central concept and a means to attain liberation. One must realize that the self does not exist. This body, this soul that we try to hold onto and consider as our own, is an illusion, and what is illusory will eventually disappear. If we cling to what does not truly exist, that attachment becomes the root of suffering. When we die, when the conditions supporting the five aggregates, skandhas, cease, we too will cease to exist. There is a question: if the true self never existed, and the illusory self is also extinguished, what is it that reincarnates? And if we are illusory, will the reincarnated being truly be us? Can it be called our next life? According to Buddhism, what we temporarily call human includes both the physical and mental aspects, rupa, form, and nama, name or mind. Even within this lifetime, we are not the same as we were originally. A classic example is whether the 5-year-old version of us and our present self are the same. Both the physical and mental aspects seem different. Modern science has shown that the cells in our body die and are replaced every second. So it's likely that none of the cells from when we were 5 remain today. Mentally, our thoughts, worldview, and values have also changed significantly. Just a second ago, we were no longer the same as we are now, both physically and mentally. Yet when we look at a picture of our 5-year-old self, we still say that's us. This is because each second we change, but the changes happen gradually and not all at once, so most of the elements remain to affirm our sense of self. More importantly, our present self is the cause of ourself in the next moment and is the effect of the previous moment. This process occurs slowly, continuously, and without interruption. We can say that we are both ourselves and not ourselves. This reflects Buddhism's middle way, where something can be both true and not true, both right and wrong, without contradiction. Applying this understanding to reincarnation, we can see it as follows. When we die, although our consciousness and body no longer remain, we transition into a new life immediately. Our present life is the cause of our next life, and this process continues uninterrupted. That is why the next life can still be called our next life. And more importantly, what we do in this life will affect our future life according to the law of cause and effect. Both name and form perish. Only karma is the sole thread connecting the cycle of birth and death. So how does karma lead us to reincarnation? Karma is defined as the actions, intentions, and words we produce and their inevitable consequences. Karma represents the law of cause and effect in Buddhism. When we plant good seeds, we reap positive outcomes and vice versa. Karma not only affects us in this life, but also determines the conditions and state of our next life. You can refer to my article on karma in Hinduism and Buddhism. According to the cosmological tradition of Buddhist reincarnation, the cosmos comprises 8 realms: the realm of desire, the realm of form, and the formless realm. The realm of form is where beings, though still in physical form, have transcended worldly desires and live through meditation. The formless realm is where beings exist only as pure consciousness, having reached profound meditative states. Finally, the realm of desire is the world of beings who still harbor ordinary desires. The realm of desire is divided into 6 realms known as the 6 paths: gods, demigods, humans, hungry ghosts, animals, and hell beings. All sentient beings within the 3 realms still undergo the suffering of cyclic existence. Even those in the formless realm, possessing deep spiritual attainment, great merit, and long lifespans, are still finite. The natural law of karma operates automatically according to each person's deeds from this and previous lives, determining a suitable place within these realms for sentient beings to reincarnate. Among these, the human realm, though not the most meritorious, there are heavenly realms with greater merit, is considered the most ideal for practicing the Dharma, transcending the bondage of karma, escaping the cycle of reincarnation, and achieving Buddhahood. If still bound by karma, whether good or bad, karma will lead us through the cycle of reincarnation. However, different branches of Buddhism have varying explanations for the process by which karma leads to rebirth. Here, we consider the 2 largest branches, Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. This is the crux of the ambiguity about whether or not there is a soul and how to understand it correctly. The concept of anatman, no self, and emptiness is the ultimate truth, but how emptiness is understood depends not on words but on interpretation. The process of reincarnation in Theravada Buddhism is as follows. Theravada Buddhism adheres closely to the foundational theories of Buddhism on reincarnation, particularly the belief in instantaneous rebirth. The process of death and rebirth is greatly influenced by 4 types of karma, listed here in decreasing order of importance. weighty karma, highly virtuous or extremely sinful, habitual karma, accumulated tendencies, and proximate karma, karma near the time of death. Based on this karma, before passing away, a person undergoes a dying process divided into two stages or phenomena known as karma signs and destination signs. Karma signs are prominent images appearing at the moment of near death, deeply rooted and frequently contemplated images that the dying person will see. Destination signs are images representing the realm they are about to be reborn into. All of these processes occur within a few fleeting moments before the dissolution of the five aggregates, skandhas. When we talk about the five aggregates, skandhas, all aspects of body and mind dissolve, leaving only karma to carry over. However, because this process happens so quickly, the karma that needs to be retained in the human realm is transferred, allowing the new person to be considered the next life of the former person, as previously explained. The mental state of a person near death, and their karma at that moment, also plays a crucial role in the process of reincarnation due to proximate karma. Therefore, in Theravada Buddhist rituals, when someone is nearing death, it is advisable to invite monks or at least play recordings of sutras and chants for the dying person to hear. Incense burning can also help. This process aids the individual in calming their mind, fostering positive thoughts, and creating good proximate karma, which can lead them to a better realm, state, or life in their next existence. So how does reincarnation work in Mahayana Buddhism? The process of reincarnation in Mahayana, including Vajrayana, Tibetan Buddhism, still relies on the foundational Buddhist teachings of impermanence, non-self, and nirvana, but it has developed into a highly intricate, mystical, and transcendent process. Here, Mahayana Buddhism, including Tibetan Buddhism, believes that after death, a person may not immediately reincarnate, but instead enter an intermediate state known as Bardo, or the in-between state. This state is neither part of any rebirth realm. Tibetan Buddhism and modern science refer to it as the near-death state. The question arises, when both the body and mind, the five aggregates, cease, what remains in the intermediate state? In Mahayana Buddhism, the theory of the five aggregates was further developed to show that after death, one aggregate, or more precisely, a part of one aggregate, still exists. This is the eighth consciousness, known as alaya vijnana or store consciousness. The alaya vijnana is what exists in the intermediate state and reincarnates when the conditions are right. To clarify the alaya vijnana, we must revisit the five aggregates. The five aggregates encompass all aspects of a person's being, including the physical body, which is called the form aggregate, rupa skandha, and the psychological aspects divided into four additional aggregates: consciousness, perception, feeling, and mental formations. The consciousness aggregate is further divided in Theravada Buddhism into six consciousnesses: visual consciousness, from the eyes; auditory consciousness, from the ears; olfactory consciousness, from the nose; gustatory consciousness, from the tongue; tactile consciousness, from the body; and mental consciousness, from the mind. Mahayana Buddhism adds two more consciousnesses, making a total of 8, including the manas consciousness, ego-grasping consciousness, and the alaya consciousness, store consciousness. The alaya consciousness encompasses a vast field in Yogacara, consciousness-only studies, but here we'll focus only on its relevance to reincarnation. The alaya consciousness has 3 functions: storage, preservation, and transformation. It contains both nama, name or mind, and rupa, form, representing all things. The alaya consciousness not only contains all of our karma, but also preserves it and nurtures karma in the form of seeds, always ready to ripen into results when the appropriate conditions are met. Because of its role in encompassing all karma, alaya consciousness is also known as karma consciousness. After a person dies, the 5 aggregates dissolve, leaving only the karma consciousness. This consciousness remains in the Bardo or intermediate state for a certain period, typically up to 7 days, after which it will undergo another death if suitable conditions for rebirth are not met. This process can happen up to 7 times, totaling a maximum of 49 days. During this time, the karma consciousness retains human traits, recalling past actions and the karma one has accumulated, both good and bad. Mahayana Buddhism holds that, except in cases of extreme virtue or extreme sin, where immediate rebirth in the Pure Land, celestial realms, or immediate descent to hell occurs, most individuals, with a mix of good and bad karma, need the intermediate state to find conditions compatible with their karma. What happens during this period is critical and can alter the location and nature of the deceased's rebirth. Based on this belief, Mahayana Buddhism developed practices such as chanting for the deceased and performing merit-generating activities for up to 49 days after someone's passing. These practices aim to accumulate merits through chanting and virtuous deeds on behalf of the deceased. By harnessing the power of the Buddha's energy, it is believed that we can guide the karma consciousness of the deceased towards a better rebirth, ideally in the Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha. This ritual is most widely known through the Ulambana Sutra and the story of Maudgalyayana's filial piety, as well as the Sutra of Chittagarbha Bodhisattva. It is important to note, however, that external assistance is only partially effective. The primary factor is still the individual's own efforts and self-awareness, as they alone ultimately determine their rebirth. So, what is the difference between Theravada and Mahayana here? The first difference is evident. According to the Pali Canon of Theravada Buddhism, consciousness within the five aggregates includes only the initial 6 types of consciousness, without the alaya consciousness. Therefore, Theravada Buddhism does not believe in an intermediate state like the Bardo. Furthermore, the idea of the Bardo, where consciousness or part of it exists separately from the body, somewhat conflicts with the core teachings of early Buddhism, and even some Mahayana teachings do not fully support this separation of body and mind. Theravada Buddhism also emphasizes self-reliant enlightenment. In this tradition, karma, cause and effect, and the process of reincarnation are entirely based on the individual's own practices and lifestyle, with no external influence possible, not even from the Buddha. Although Mahayana Buddhism emphasizes self-reliance, it also supports the combination with external assistance, other power. An example of this is the Pure Land method of chanting the names of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to receive their blessings. Due to this difference, Theravada Buddhism does not have the ritual of transfer of merit, kosio, whereas the chanting of sutras by monks in Theravada is to help the dying attain a state of peaceful, good proximate karma. Mahayana Buddhism, on the other hand, has a tradition of transfer of merit to support the deceased in finding a favorable realm for rebirth. However, it should be emphasized that whether it's the Theravada chanting or Mahayana transfer of merit, the true subjects of influence are often the family members, not necessarily the dying or deceased. So why is the intermediate state, Bardo, not considered a soul? When we talk about karma consciousness in the Bardo state, it resembles the common concept of a soul, which Buddhism fundamentally rejects. The difference between a soul and karma consciousness in the Bardo lies here. The soul, as typically understood by non-Buddhist beliefs, is eternal and the master of the body, existing forever. However, in Mahayana Buddhism, karma consciousness is always in flux. Even in the Bardo, the consciousness and mind preparing for reincarnation do not retain any rigid, fixed traits. Karma consciousness only appears to be immortal because it flows in a continuous stream. Buddhism calls this phenomenon streaming, like a river whose water is always changing. The water now is not the same as a moment before, yet we temporarily view it as a single continuous flow. Although Mahayana Buddhism emphasizes self-reliance, it also supports the combination with external assistance, other power. An example of this is the Pure Land method of chanting the names of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to receive their blessings. Due to this difference, Theravada Buddhism does not have the ritual of transfer of merit, whereas the chanting of sutras by monks in Theravada is to help the dying attain a state of peaceful, good proximate karma. Mahayana Buddhism, on the other hand, has a tradition of transfer of merit to support the deceased in finding a favorable realm for rebirth. However, it should be emphasized that whether it's the Theravada chanting or Mahayana transfer of merit, the true subjects of influence are often the family members, not necessarily the dying or deceased. So why is the intermediate state, Bardo, not considered a soul? When we talk about karma consciousness in the Bardo state, it resembles the common concept of a soul, which Buddhism fundamentally rejects. The difference between a soul and karma consciousness in the Bardo lies here. The soul, as typically understood by non-Buddhist beliefs, is eternal and the master of the body, existing forever. However, in Mahayana Buddhism, karma consciousness is always in flux. Even in the Bardo, the consciousness and mind preparing for reincarnation do not retain any rigid, fixed traits. Karma consciousness only appears to be immortal because it flows in a continuous stream. Buddhism calls this phenomenon streaming, like a river whose water is always changing. The water now is not the same as a moment before, yet we temporarily view it as a single continuous flow. Mahayana Buddhism interprets impermanence and non-self more expansively, suggesting that emptiness does not mean non-existence but rather unreality, something that is neither fully existent nor non-existent, neither one nor not one, without contradiction. We arrive at the conclusion that there is no definite conclusion here. However, the absence of a permanent, independent soul is unique to Buddhism and distinctly separates it from any other religion. The concepts of the Bardo, alaya consciousness, transfer of merit, and ideas resembling a soul became more emphasized later, particularly in Tibet, due to the influence of Guru Padmasambhava, a great tantric master from India. In China, where beliefs about the afterlife were very strong, these concepts also took hold. In India, although Buddhism and Brahmanism had conflicts, they also deeply influenced each other. It was almost impossible to avoid the belief in an eternal soul, despite attempts to reinterpret it. For instance, the idea of sentient beings possessing Buddha nature is one of the most significant Vedic influences on Buddhism. As for the mystical mantras in Vajrayana Buddhism, they too can be traced back to Vedic culture. In China, the ritual of transfer of merit was first recorded during the Tang dynasty. Earlier Buddhist teachings did not mention this ritual. Currently, many Buddhist schools still use the term soul, but this depends on the source you choose. I don't want to claim that what I'm saying is entirely accurate, as I haven't experienced it firsthand, but as far as I understand, these are teachings from Orthodox Buddhism.